Mommy, where is everyone?
Oh my God. No, get out of the way.
A fateful moment. An accident that changes everything. Will the little girl reunite with her family, or will darkness forever consume hope?
Atlanta, Georgia. A bustling city of towering skyscrapers, crowded streets and cultural diversity flowing through every corner. In the southern part of the city, where the African American community thrives and life hums with energy, Malik and Tasha lived in a modest, humble home. They were a young couple, brimming with love and faith in the future. Since the day they got married, they had dreamed of a lively household filled with the laughter of children echoing in their little home. But fate seemed not to favor them. Every evening, Tasha would sit by the small window in the living room, her gaze distant, fixed on the busy streets of Atlanta. The headlights of passing cars gleamed brightly, and the chatter of people filled the air, but her heart remained silent, weighed down by an indescribable sorrow. Why is God testing me like this? She would silently ask herself, the question echoing repeatedly in her mind. Malik, her strong and hard-working husband, labored tirelessly in construction to provide for their family. He tried to comfort her with loving words, but deep within, he too carried an unrelenting burden of despair. 5 years passed, and their little home remained eerily quiet. They tried everything: prayers, visits to renowned clinics, even following the peculiar advice of elders in their community. Yet, as months slipped by, hope began to fade, and despair crept into every corner of their lives. Then one day, a miracle happened. Tasha discovered she was pregnant. She couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the doctor's results. Malik, hearing the news, held her tightly as they both broke down in tears of overwhelming joy. They had waited so long for this moment. A tiny angel was about to enter their lives and fill the void of all those empty years. That May, during Georgia's radiant summer, Layla was born. A tiny baby with large, sparkling eyes and a radiant smile that changed everything. Layla wasn't just a child, she was a miracle, a testament to faith and love, overcoming all adversity. Tasha no longer sat silently by the window. Instead, she gazed lovingly at Layla, sleeping soundly in her little crib. The gentle glow of the nightlight illuminated her baby's delicate features. Layla is a gift from God. She's the best thing that has ever happened to us, Tasha often told her friends when speaking about her daughter. Evenings in Atlanta became a cherished time. Malik and Tasha would sit together on their old sofa, quietly watching Layla sleep. Sometimes Malik would gently hold Tasha's hand, smile and whisper, "We made it, my love." Silent prayers of gratitude rose to the heavens, and Layla's laughter each morning became the driving force that helped them conquer every challenge. Layla was a radiant light in the darkness that once engulfed their lives. She was their hope, their reason to continue believing in miracles, no matter what challenges lay ahead. Every time they looked at Layla, Malik and Tasha were reminded of those years of suffering, but they also felt deeply that every moment of pain had been worth it. Atlanta might be a large, bustling city, but for Malik and Tasha in their little home, Layla was their entire world. Friday afternoon in Midtown Atlanta, the sweltering summer heat blanketed the city. Malik was deep in an urgent meeting at a massive construction site where the sound of heavy machinery echoed, blending with the blaring horns from the busy streets. A devoted father, Malik always made an effort to finish work early every weekend to pick up his little daughter, Layla, from school. But today, the hustle and bustle of the city had pulled him away from that routine. Just a few more minutes, Malik told himself as he bent down to review a blueprint handed to him by the site manager. But time slipped away faster than he realized. The clock on his wrist read 4:15 p.m., yet he remained unaware that he had already missed something very important. Across town, on the eastern side of the city, Layla's elementary school began to empty out. With her small pink backpack slung over her shoulders and her lunchbox clutched tightly in her hand, Layla sat quietly on a bench beneath the shade of tall trees. Normally, she would be cheerful, waiting for her dad in the school courtyard, where the laughter of other children filled the air. One by one, her classmates were picked up by their parents, their giggles and chatter fading into the distance. But today, Layla still hadn't spotted the familiar blue pickup truck her dad always drove. She glanced at the clock. The minute hand pointed to 4. Layla tried to keep a brave face, just as her mother had taught her. "Daddy will be here soon. Maybe he's stuck in traffic," she whispered to herself, clutching her lunchbox a little tighter. But as nearly an hour passed, her patience wore thin. Standing up, Layla looked around the now empty schoolyard. A decision sparked in her mind. She would walk home by herself. Layla stepped through the school gates, leaving behind the familiar world of laughter and comfort. The road ahead led towards the bustling district of Decatur, where her family lived in a quiet, close-knit neighborhood. With her small steps, Layla reassured herself that she would get home soon, and her parents wouldn't be upset when they found out. Her tiny hands held tightly onto her backpack, while her lunchbox swung gently with each step. The streets of Atlanta during rush hour were like a crowded river, with an unending stream of vehicles. Layla walked close to the curb, her eyes focused ahead with remarkable determination for someone so young. Suddenly, the lively commotion from a roadside diner caught her attention. The smell of burgers and fries wafted through the air, making her stomach growl. Layla hadn't eaten lunch at school because she didn't like the meal her mum had packed. She stopped in her tracks, glancing down at her lunchbox. A thought flickered in her mind. Maybe Mum wouldn't be mad if I got something to eat here. But just as she stepped toward the curb, her lunchbox slipped from her hands and rolled onto the road. Layla bent down to pick up the lunchbox, unaware of the danger speeding towards her. From a distance, the roar of a Jeep Cherokee's engine shattered the quiet. Derek, a businessman driving home to Decatur from downtown Atlanta, was behind the wheel. Distracted by his phone, Derek barely registered his surroundings. He only looked up when a pedestrian's frantic shout rang out. "Watch out!" Derek slammed on the brakes, but it was too late. A loud thud echoed and Layla fell to the ground. Derek leapt out of his car, his heart pounding wildly in his chest. Lying motionless on the asphalt was a small girl, her silky black hair gently spread out on the pavement. Derek knelt beside her, carefully lifting her tiny frame. Blood trickled from a wound on her head. "Oh God, please don't let this happen," he whispered, overwhelmed by guilt. Without hesitation, Derek carried Layla to his car, placing her gently on the back seat before speeding toward the nearest hospital in downtown Atlanta. As the Jeep weaved through the chaotic traffic, Derek gripped the steering wheel tightly, his voice breaking as he prayed aloud. "Lord, please save her. Please let her live." Behind them, the streets of Atlanta returned to their usual frenzy. But somewhere in a small home in Decatur, a family was waiting in growing desperation, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The sun began to dip low in the Atlanta sky, the harsh daylight easing into a softer glow, though the heat still lingered in the air. On a busy street, Derek, a successful businessman, was driving his Jeep Cherokee back to his home in Decatur, a mere 15 minutes from downtown Atlanta. Exhausted after a long day, his mind was tangled with thoughts of meetings and unanswered emails. And then, it happened. A moment that would change his life forever. In the distance, Derek spotted a small figure bent down in the middle of the road. Layla's tiny legs edged cautiously onto the asphalt as she reached for her fallen lunchbox. Derek didn't have enough time to react. "Oh God, no!" he shouted, slamming his foot onto the brake. But the Jeep's momentum was too great to stop immediately. A sickening thud echoed through the air. Derek felt the world freeze in that instant. His heart pounded violently as he jumped out of the car. His breath hitched as his eyes landed on the small, motionless figure on the road. Layla's delicate black hair fanned softly over the hot pavement, and a crimson streak of blood began to spread from her head, pooling ominously. "No, no, no, please, no!" Derek whispered, his voice trembling. Kneeling down, he carefully lifted Layla in his arms. Her body was as light as a feather, but the weight of what had just happened bore heavily on his shoulders. Layla didn't move. Her eyes remained shut, her breaths faint and shallow. There was no time to think, no time to hesitate. Derek, his hands now sticky with blood, opened the back door of his Jeep and gently placed Layla on the seat, securing her with the seatbelt. He climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine and sped off, his tires screeching against the pavement. The Jeep tore through the crowded streets of downtown Atlanta, weaving between rows of cars stuck in rush-hour traffic. Derek kept glancing at the rearview mirror, his eyes fixed on Layla's lifeless form in the back seat. Questions stormed his mind. Who is this little girl? Where is her family? How could I let this happen? His chest felt heavy with guilt, and his breaths came in short, shallow gasps. Dear God, he muttered under his breath, the words spilling out instinctively. Please save her. Please let her live. As he drove, Derek couldn't help but think of his own son, who had passed away a few years earlier after a long battle with a terminal illness. The memory clawed its way to the surface, raw and painful, but it steeled his resolve. He couldn't let another child's life slip away. The Jeep screeched to a halt outside Grady Memorial Hospital, one of Atlanta's largest trauma centers. Derek leapt out of the car, scooped Layla into his arms, and sprinted toward the emergency entrance. Bursting into the ER, Derek yelled, "Help! This girl's been in a serious accident!" A team of medical staff rushed forward, swiftly transferring Layla onto a gurney and wheeling her into the trauma room. A doctor stepped forward, his face taut with urgency as he examined Layla. She's suffered a severe head injury. We'll do everything we can, he said, his voice measured but grave. He glanced at Derek, noting the panic etched on his face. Derek stood frozen, his blood-streaked hands hanging limply by his sides. He watched helplessly as the trauma room doors swung shut, separating him from Layla. Derek backed away to the nearest bench in the waiting area, sinking down as he buried his face in his hands. God, if you're really there, please let her survive, he whispered, tears streaming down his face. He didn't know her name, didn't know anything about her family, yet in that moment, Layla wasn't just a stranger. She was a beacon of hope, a reminder of how fragile life could be. Minutes ticked by like hours. Derek couldn't sit still, pacing back and forth across the waiting room, his eyes glued to the trauma room door. Nurses hurried past, their footsteps echoing in the sterile hallway, but none brought the news he so desperately needed. Somewhere else, in another corner of Atlanta, Layla's family was still unaware that their lives were hanging in the balance. For Derek, all he could do was hope that somehow everything would turn out okay. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each sound a stark reminder that he was racing against time. A race to save a precious tiny life. In the small kitchen of their cozy home in Decatur, the warm glow of the overhead lights spilled over the dining table, where Tasha was preparing dinner. The aroma of roasted chicken and sautéed vegetables filled the air, but her heart was restless, gripped by an unshakable unease. The clock on the wall struck 5 o'clock p.m. Tasha wiped her hands on a kitchen towel, glanced out the window, and wondered why Malik and Layla weren't home yet. By this time, the house would usually be filled with the cheerful sound of Layla's laughter as she shared stories about her day at school, and Malik's joyful chuckles in response. But today, the house was eerily quiet. Picking up her phone, Tasha called Malik. His voice came through, tinged with confusion. "I thought you picked Layla up already." Malik's words hit Tasha like a thunderclap. Her heart seemed to stop for a moment. "What do you mean? You didn't pick her up?" Silence hung on the line as Malik realized the gravity of his mistake. He had forgotten the most important task of the day. "Oh God, Layla," Malik exclaimed, his voice trembling. "I'm heading to the school right now." Without hesitation, Tasha dashed out of the house, her pace quickening into a near sprint as she reached the main road. She flagged down an Uber, climbed into the back seat, her hands trembling uncontrollably. A storm of questions churned in her mind. Is Layla still waiting? Is she safe? What if something has happened to her? The 15-minute car ride felt like an eternity. When the Uber pulled up in front of Layla's elementary school, Tasha jumped out, her eyes darting across the campus. But the schoolyard was completely empty. There were no students, no familiar laughter, just an unsettling stillness. Tasha felt her chest tighten as she rushed toward the office, where the principal, a middle-aged woman, was preparing to lock up for the day. "Principal Carter!" Tasha called out, her voice shaky. "Where's my daughter Layla? I can't find her anywhere." Principal Carter looked at her with surprise but didn't have an immediate answer. "I remember seeing Layla here after dismissal," she said, attempting to reassure Tasha. "But I'm not sure where she went after that. Perhaps we should ask her teacher." Hearing her name called, a teacher hurried over. "I saw Layla sitting on the bench near the schoolyard," the teacher explained. "But then she walked off on her own. I assumed her father came to pick her up." Those words struck Tasha like a dagger to the heart. Layla had left the school by herself. Where could she have gone? Tasha sank to the ground near the school gates, burying her face in her hands as tears streamed down her cheeks. Her mind flooded with images of Layla, small and vulnerable, lost somewhere in the sprawling city. A few minutes later, Malik arrived at the school, his car screeching to a halt. He stepped out to find Tasha sitting on the ground, her tear-streaked face turning up toward him, a mixture of fear and anger in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Tasha. I really am," Malik stammered, his voice thick with guilt. But there was no time for blame. They had to find Layla. And they had to do it now. Together, the couple began scouring the streets near the school. Tasha approached street vendors and passers-by, asking if anyone had seen a little girl with a pink backpack. No one had. Malik ventured farther, combing through busier streets and neighborhoods, but he found no trace of his daughter. With each passing minute, their anxiety swelled like an unrelenting tide. "Layla, where are you?" Tasha whispered, her voice breaking as tears rolled down her face. Malik placed his hands on her shoulders, trying to steady her, though his own heart was pounding with dread. "We will find her, Tasha, I promise. We have to believe she's still safe." But deep down, fear gnawed at both of them. Their minds raced with the worst possibilities. Layla lost in the crowded city, or worse, in danger. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Layla was fighting for her life. Unbeknownst to Malik and Tasha, a stranger had already picked up their daughter and placed her in his car. Their lives were on the brink of an unimaginable turning point, one they never could have seen coming. Outside Grady Memorial Hospital in downtown Atlanta, the neon lights illuminated the emergency entrance as ambulances came and went in an endless stream. Inside, Derek sat frozen on a plastic chair in the waiting area, his hands tightly clasped together. Layla's blood still stained the sleeves of his shirt, a vivid reminder of that fateful moment on the street just hours earlier. He couldn't stop staring at the doors of the emergency room, where the small girl was now fighting for her life. Derek knew nothing about Layla, her name, her parents, or why she had been there at that moment. But one thing he was certain of: he would do whatever it took to save her. The hurried sound of footsteps echoed across the tiled floor as a doctor in a white coat emerged from the emergency room doors. Derek sprang to his feet, nearly colliding with the doctor. "How is she, doctor? Will she be okay?" Derek's voice quivered, his eyes filled with desperation. The doctor let out a heavy sigh, his expression grave. "She's suffered severe head trauma. We've managed to stop the bleeding for now, but she needs surgery immediately if we're going to save her life. However," he hesitated, as if searching for the right words, "we don't have the proper equipment here to perform such a complex procedure." Derek felt as though his heart had plummeted into an abyss, but instead of succumbing to panic, he made a swift decision. "I'll cover all the costs," Derek said firmly. "Call the best doctor from Emory University Hospital. They have the equipment, right? Please move her there. We can't lose her." The doctor stared at Derek, surprised by his resolve. "Are you sure? This is a significant decision." Derek nodded without hesitation. "I'm sure. I'll sign whatever forms are needed, pay whatever it costs. Just save her." As the doctors prepared to transfer Layla to Emory University Hospital, Derek tried to piece together any clues about the girl's identity. He recalled that Layla had been wearing a school uniform, a navy blue dress with a school logo embroidered on the chest. He searched through the hospital's belongings bag, hoping to find the uniform and perhaps a clue to her family. Derek checked every pocket, every inch of fabric, but something strange stopped him in his tracks. The uniform was gone. "That's impossible," he muttered, confusion spreading through him. He was certain he had brought the uniform to the hospital with Layla. How could it have disappeared? Who could have taken it? And why? The uniform's disappearance cast a shadow of mystery over an already tense situation. Derek couldn't help but be consumed by unanswered questions. Where is her family? Do they even know their daughter is here, teetering on the edge of life and death? Derek sank back into the waiting room chair, his gaze distant and unfocused. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him, not only because he was the one who had hit Layla, but because he felt an inexplicable bond with this little girl. Layla reminded him of his own son, the boy he couldn't save no matter how hard he had tried. "Not this time," Derek whispered to himself. "God, please don't take this child away. Please let me save her." As nurses carefully loaded Layla into an ambulance, Derek's eyes never left her fragile figure. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing for certain: he would not give up. Somewhere in Atlanta, Layla's family was gripped by panic, unaware that a stranger was doing everything in his power to keep their daughter alive. And Derek, his heart heavy with guilt and determination, began to understand something profound. Sometimes you don't need to know someone to love and protect them as though they were your own. The journey was just beginning, and Derek knew it would change him forever. In the dimly lit corridor of Emory University Hospital, Derek sat outside the emergency room, his hands pressed against his forehead, his gaze weary and heavy with guilt. Hours had passed since Layla was wheeled into surgery, but the weight of worry and remorse clung to him like an unshakable net. Suddenly, the familiar sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. It was Tina, his wife. Tina walked briskly toward him, her sleek black hair tied neatly back, her eyes flashing with a mix of concern and tension. She had received Derek's call and left the house immediately, despite the late hour. "Derek, what happened? Are you okay?" she asked, gently placing her hands on his shoulders. Derek stood trying to steady his voice. "Tina, I caused an accident. I didn't see her. That little girl. Layla. She's in surgery now. I don't know if she's going to make it." His voice broke, and his gaze drifted away from his wife. Tina squeezed Derek's hand, her expression soft but tinged with something unreadable. "You did the right thing, Derek. You brought her here and did everything you could. I know you're a responsible man." But as Tina glanced toward the doors of the operating room, where Layla was fighting for her life, a strange glimmer appeared in her eyes. While Derek turned away to speak with a doctor, Tina slowly approached a nearby table where a nurse had placed Layla's belongings, a small bag containing her navy blue school uniform. Tina glanced around to ensure no one was watching before carefully sifting through the items. Her hand brushed against the soft fabric of Layla's dress, embroidered with the school logo. She froze for a moment, her eyes locked on the uniform, as though it held some profound secret. A flood of emotions rose within her, a yearning she had suppressed for years. Quickly, she tucked the dress into her handbag, her mind a storm of conflicting feelings. After the doctors announced that Layla's surgery was progressing well, Derek and Tina left the emergency area to wait in a quieter hallway. Derek sat down, his hands cradling his head, while Tina sat beside him, her gaze weighed down by thoughts she couldn't shake. "Derek," she began softly, her voice filled with emotion, "have you ever thought that maybe—" She hesitated, carefully choosing her words. "Maybe this little girl, Layla, is our chance." Derek lifted his head, his brows furrowed in confusion. "What are you saying?" Tina sighed, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Derek, ever since we lost Jaden, I've felt incomplete. I've always believed that someday we'd have a chance to do something. To fill that void." Her voice trembled as tears welled in her eyes. "And Layla, She's so special, Derek. I feel like she's been brought to us for a reason. Derek stared at Tina, his eyes wide with disbelief. Tina, what are you talking about? She's a lost little girl. You can't think like that. Layla has parents. We can't take that away from them. Tina turned away, tears streaming down her face. But where are they, Derek? Why aren't they here looking for her? Do they even know she's here? Do they care? Her voice shook with emotion. I just want to give Layla a home, a safe place where she'll be loved. Derek stood, his hands on his hips, his expression a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Tina, I understand how much you're hurting. I miss Jaden too, every single day. But Layla isn't the answer to our pain. She needs to go back to her real family. Tina remained silent, her eyes fixed on the floor as Derek walked down the hall to get some water. Her heart weighed heavy with fear that Derek would never understand how she felt. But deep down, Tina knew her actions, taking Layla's uniform, weren't just impulsive. They were driven by a deep-seated longing, a desire she could no longer suppress. Inside the operating room, Layla was fighting to survive, but outside another battle was unfolding, a battle between love, loss, and morality. Derek and Tina were each grappling with questions of compassion, responsibility, and the limits of what they called love. Somewhere in Atlanta, Layla's fate hung in the balance, while Tina's secret threatened to change everything. Across the city of Atlanta, darkness began to descend as Malik and Tasha hurried down street after street, plastering flyers in the hope of finding their little girl. Layla's face, along with the words, "Missing, please help," was printed clearly on every piece of paper. Each time Malik looked at her picture, it felt like his heart was being torn apart. Though he tried to remain calm, the worry in his eyes betrayed him. Tasha, clutching a stack of flyers, repeated through tears, "Layla, Mommy will find you. You have to be safe. I know you'll be okay." Her trembling hands reflected the growing fear in her heart as she taped flyers to lampposts and to walls. They visited every hospital, every emergency room, pleading with each staff member they met. "We're looking for our daughter. Her name is Layla. She's 7 years old, wearing a navy blue school uniform," Malik explained, his voice hoarse with worry. But the answer was the same at every place. "We don't have anyone named Layla admitted." Despite her exhaustion and despair, Tasha never stopped praying. "Dear God, please protect my daughter. Please bring Layla back to us," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Malik stood beside her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder, but he too was fighting his own greatest fear. Meanwhile, at Emory University Hospital, Layla was slowly recovering after her surgery. Though still weak, her breathing had stabilized. The white bandages wrapped around her head concealed the severe injuries she had endured. The soft glow of the hospital window bathed her delicate face in light, making her look like a sleeping angel. Derek stood by her bedside, his eyes gentle but filled with inner turmoil. He had done everything he could to save Layla's life, but now a heavier question weighed on his mind. Where did she belong? Derek knew it was time to act. He couldn't keep Layla there any longer. "Tina, we have to return Layla to her family," he said, his voice steady yet firm. Tina, seated in the corner of the room, turned to face him, her eyes dark with emotion. "What are you talking about, Derek? What family? Where were they when she got hurt? Where were they when Layla needed them the most?" Derek sighed deeply, trying to keep his composure. "Tina, this isn't about us. Layla has a family. They're looking for her, and we can't keep her here like this." But Tina stood abruptly, her eyes flashing with anger. "No, I don't agree. Derek, don't you see? She's our only chance. I can't lose Layla, not like we lost Jaden." Tina's words hit Derek like a knife to the heart. He understood his wife's pain, but keeping Layla wasn't the answer to healing it. "Tina, I know you're hurting. I'm hurting too, but this is wrong. Layla needs to go back to her real family." Tears streaming down her face, Tina locked eyes with Derek. "If you send Layla back, I'll leave, Derek. I can't take this anymore." Her words hung heavily in the air. Derek stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. He loved Tina deeply, but he couldn't ignore the voice of his conscience. Layla wasn't theirs to keep. She had a family waiting for her, a family Derek knew he had to help reunite. Leaving the room to get some air, Derek stepped onto the hospital balcony and gazed at the glittering lights of Atlanta. Memories of his son, Jaden, flooded his mind, his sweet smile, the sound of his voice calling out, "Daddy." But then he thought of Layla, the fragile little girl lying in the hospital room. Derek knew he had to do the right thing, even if it meant losing Tina. "Dear God," he whispered, "please give me the strength to do what's right." Outside, the city buzzed with life, but for Derek, time felt frozen. His decision would change everything, for Layla, for Tina, and for himself. Somewhere in Atlanta, Layla's family continued their frantic search, hoping that soon they would be reunited with their precious daughter. A quiet morning dawned at Emory University Hospital, sunlight streaming through the large window in Layla's hospital room. Derek stood by her bedside, his weary eyes fixed on the small, fragile girl who remained asleep. She had survived the surgery, but the sight of her fragile breathing and the white bandages wrapped around her head filled Derek with a deep ache. A nurse entered carrying a set of clean clothes for Layla, along with her personal belongings. Derek's eyes glanced at the bag where the neatly folded navy blue school uniform lay. His gaze lingered on the small logo stitched onto the pocket, Decatur Elementary School. "There it is," Derek murmured, a flicker of hope lighting up his exhausted face. It felt like a ray of light piercing through the darkness. He quickly committed the school's name to memory and resolved to take action. Wasting no time, Derek left the hospital after ensuring Layla was safe. He drove straight to Decatur Elementary School, just a 20-minute drive from the hospital. As the school came into view, it stood as a clear reminder that Layla had a family waiting for her somewhere. Stepping into the principal's office, Derek took in the serious yet calm atmosphere of the school. Principal Carter, a middle-aged woman with an authoritative yet gentle demeanor, looked up from her desk. "Hello, Mom. My name is Derek. I need to talk to you about a little girl named Layla. I believe she's a student here," he began, his voice tinged with tension. Principal Carter's eyebrows lifted in surprise. "Layla? That little girl has been missing for days. Her parents have been searching everywhere for her. They've reported her missing to the police and have been contacting us constantly." She trailed off, her expression shifting as if piecing together a puzzle. "You found her?" Derek nodded, a wave of guilt washing over him. "She's at the hospital. I was in an accident with her, but I got her to the hospital, and she's safe now." The principal remained silent for a moment before speaking, her tone gentle but resolute. "Layla's parents need to know this. They've been in despair, and I'm sure they'll want to thank you for saving their daughter." Derek returned to the hospital where Tina sat by Layla's bedside. The little girl was still asleep, her breaths soft and angelic. Derek entered the room, his eyes locking onto his wife. "Tina," he started, trying to keep his voice calm. "I've found out about Layla's family. Her parents are looking for her. I need to take her back to them." Tina lifted her head, her eyes flashing with defiance. "No, Derek. I've already told you she belongs with us." "What family? Where were they when Layla got hurt?" "They abandoned her." "Tina, that's not true," Derek replied firmly, his tone unwavering. "They didn't abandon her. They've been searching for her frantically. We can't selfishly keep her here. It's not right." Tina burst into tears, this time out of frustration. "If you take Layla away, Derek, I will leave you. I can't handle this anymore." Her words cut through Derek like a blade, but he knew what had to be done. He leaned down, gently touching his wife's hand. "Tina, I love you, but I can't let our pain take away Layla's chance to reunite with her family. I hope you'll understand." That night, Derek carefully placed Layla in the back seat of his Jeep, securing her with the seatbelt. The little girl had woken up but remained weak. Derek drove through the quiet streets of Atlanta, heading toward Malik and Tasha's home. When he arrived, the dim light from the small house's window spilled onto the porch. Derek stepped out of the car carrying Layla in his arms and approached the front door. From inside, he could hear the faint sound of a woman's voice, Tasha's, praying tearfully, pleading with God to bring her daughter back. Derek knocked on the door. Within seconds, it swung open, and there stood Malik and Tasha, their eyes swollen and red from crying. When they saw Layla in Derek's arms, they froze, their breath catching in their throats. Then, as if a dam had broken, both burst into tears. "Layla!" Tasha cried, rushing to embrace her daughter. Malik dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face, as he thanked God for answering their prayers. Derek stood quietly, watching the emotional reunion. A wave of relief washed over him, though it was tinged with a quiet sadness. He knew he had done the right thing. As he turned to leave, Derek glanced back at the family, now reunited in a mixture of tears and laughter. Under the Atlanta night sky, he whispered to himself, "Layla's home, and that's all that matters." As Layla was gently placed on her bed, the soft glow of the bedside lamp illuminated her small, delicate face. Malik and Tasha couldn't hold back their tears. Seeing their daughter safe and sound, they knelt beside the bed, thanking God and holding Layla close with all their might. They turned to Derek, who stood quietly in the corner of the room, his own eyes red and brimming with emotion. "We can never repay you for saving our daughter's life," Malik said, his voice trembling. Derek smiled softly, tears glistening in his eyes. "I just did what was right. Layla is a special girl, and I knew she belonged here, with her family." Tina, who had been caught in the pain of her own struggles, stepped forward, her head bowed in regret. "I was wrong, and I'm deeply sorry. Layla, you are a miracle, and I promise never to let my selfishness get in the way of what's right." Malik and Tasha nodded, meeting Tina's apology with an embrace full of forgiveness. The family gathered around Layla, their love and warmth filling every corner of the room. Before leaving, Tasha held Derek's hand, her eyes filled with gratitude. "You will always be a part of Layla's story, a hero in her eyes and in ours." Layla's story, intertwined with Derek and her family, is more than just a tale of an accident. It is a testament to the power of compassion, forgiveness, and boundless love. In life, we often get consumed by our own pain and loss, forgetting that doing the right thing not only helps others, but also heals us in ways we never imagined. If you are part of the African American community, take pride in the rich and powerful cultural heritage that we inherit. These stories are not just memories. They are invaluable lessons that connect us to our past, preserving the values and identity that make us who we are. Thank you for following this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, please click like, share your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video with your friends and family. Let stories like this continue to spread, preserving cultural values and delivering meaningful lessons to future generations. If you have inspiring stories of your own, we'd love to hear them. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you won't miss the next story.